Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that unbeaten up-and-comer in the bantamweight division, Johanna Wanu, is set to return to action later on this month,
on the 22nd,
against an opponent that has yet to be announced. Johanna, who sports an unblemished record of 9 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having last been in action in May of last year. That left a lot of time last year for her to have another fight, but because she's not with a major promotional outfit, because she's not with a Matchroom or a Queensbury, that really does limit her resources and her ability to get out there.
There's a lot of time left to do another fight.
She did manage to fight 2 times last year, so it wasn't a complete wash. She fought 2 times last year, 4 times the year before that, 4 times. Campaigning in what is a very deep division, a deep weight class where world titles are changing hands and the landscape itself is changing. The IBF title recently was transferred from Ebony Bridges to Miyo Yoshida.
WBC title was transferred from Yuli Hangaluna to Dina Thorsland.
This all took place last year. Nina Hughes, she remains the WBA champion at this weight, but she didn't remain with Matchroom. She decided to leave Matchroom, leave Let's Go Management, and sign to Lou DeBellia. She has yet to fight under the banner. These are the champions at this weight, the champions that Johanna Wanu at some point is going to want to challenge if she means to become one herself, if she means to become a champion. The French-born, United Kingdom-based fighter is a talented fighter, and we've talked about that already in several videos. The silver lining for her is that she's a younger fighter, younger than all the reigning champions at this weight, younger than Dina Thorsland, younger than Nina Hughes, than Miyo Yoshida, so time is on her side.
That's the game.
There are always new fighters coming through. There's always someone climbing up those ranks. Johanna Wanu is only 23 years old, just 23, and even at 23, here and now, I'd give her decent odds against Miyo Yoshida. I'd even give her decent odds against Nina Hughes.
Really?
It's Dina Thorsland everybody has to worry about. It's Dina Thorsland that I don't think she's ready for.
She's the best.
This division's only unified champion, Ring Magazine and lineal champion as well.
Dina's the best in show at 118 pounds.
Be some time before Johanna Wanu is ready to face her. Johanna Wanu, who's set to return to action very soon. Johanna Wanu, who's not the only talented unbeaten up-and-comer at this weight. There is also Bree Howling of Canada, who we've talked about on several occasions. Serene Satine of Turkey. This is a deep division, a deep weight class.
Johanna's a part of it.
Based out of the United Kingdom, we're not just 1, but 3. 3 of the major platforms and 3 of the major promotional outfits in the United Kingdom all host stables of female fighters, robust ones. You're talking about Matchroom, you're talking about Queensbury, you're talking about Boxer.
There are more opportunities for a female boxer in the UK than there are in the US.
The sport in and of itself is a bit more widely accepted, further along. Thus, so long as Johanna Wanu stays busy, stays active, stays winning, and positions herself to one day fight for an alphabet title, I feel like it's only a matter of time before one of those major promotional outfits decide to pick her up, because she is talented.
Those promoters will recognize that talent.
And just the other day, I saw Queensbury Promotions make not 1, but 2 additions to their stable of Valkyries. I saw Queensbury sign 2 female fighters.
So you see what I mean.
Keep your eyes peeled for the ring return of Johanna Wanu later on this month against an opponent that has yet to be announced, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. In men's super middleweight news, a recent set of comments from former unified super middleweight champion Andre Ward, who's saying Canelo's refusal to fight David Benavidez would taint his legacy.
This guy again?
Every time you see Andre Ward or hear Andre Ward these days, he's always taking shots at Canelo Alvarez. It's a regular practice for him now. Speaking to the Breakfast Club, Ward spoke about Alvarez's reluctance to face Benavidez, saying a failure to meet him in the ring would be viewed by fans as a strike against Canelo's legacy. Absolutely, Ward said. Canelo fans regularly call me a hater, but I'm telling the truth.
Oh, you're throwing stones in a glass house.
If not fighting David Benavidez counts against Canelo's legacy, doesn't not fighting Dimitri Bivol or Artur Beterbiev count against yours?
You retired without fighting them.
Ward questioned the legitimacy of Alvarez's resume, criticizing the timing of certain fights and the ages of certain opponents at the time of their fights with Alvarez. When he fought Kovalev, Kovalev was cooked. He wasn't the crusher. He wasn't the undefeated guy. He had lost that. I'm not knocking the hustle.
Yes, you are.
When you're a bit of a hustler yourself, I mean, if you're going to diminish the version of Sergey that he fought, I can turn right around and diminish the version of Chad Dawson that you fought.
I know that Chad offered to come down. I know that Chad didn't have to do that, the same way I know Sergey didn't have to fight Canelo. He chose to.
So why are you making excuses for him?
Because that's how much he hates Canelo Alvarez, because that's how big a hater he is.
Ward admitted that Alvarez needn't take on top opponents in every fight, but he said he hasn't done enough to regularly challenge himself in order to claim status as the best boxing has to offer. You lose me when you don't fight the best, but you say everybody else has got to fight the best, Ward said. Canelo is a really good fighter, but you don't know how good you are until you fight the other best.
Oh, bullshit.
You're propping up David Benavidez now, but before that you were propping up Caleb Plant, unbeaten Caleb Plant, who you actually picked to beat Canelo Alvarez.
Remember?
So that after Canelo fights him, and after Canelo beats him, and after Canelo makes the history at this weight that you never made,
Undisputed.
you can start talking about how he's not regularly fighting the best, or he's not doing that enough for you. Is that what it is? You had the same chance that he had to make history. You had the same chance at super middleweight, at light heavyweight. At super middleweight, he was only one belt away from becoming that division's first undisputed champion. But because he didn't want to travel and he didn't want to go to Canada, he never fought Lucien Boutte.
The same thing happened at light heavyweight.
Because he didn't want to travel and he didn't want to go to Canada, he never fought Adonis Stevenson. He retired from the sport, having not made the history that Canelo Alvarez made.
Underneath it all, that's what I think grinds his gears about Canelo Alvarez, because,
Listen,
let me take you back in time for a second. Let me refresh your memory.
Andre Ward didn't always take shots at Canelo, you know.
He didn't.
Before he was taking shots at Canelo Alvarez, he was taking shots at Gennady Golovkin. Their sordid history, their sordid past.
When HBO was still in boxing and Gennady Golovkin's profile was rising, he was rising in popularity.
Andre Ward wasn't taking shots at Canelo Alvarez then. No, back then, he was taking shots at Gennady Golovkin, who was at middleweight. Andre Ward, at least up until that point, he had been fighting at super middleweight, but he experienced some promotional issues that saw him sit out for about 2.5 years. And when he came back as a light heavyweight.
On the way back, Golovkin versus Ward became a conversation, though it never became a fight.
And there are mixed reports as to why exactly that never happened. But the gist of it was that Andre Ward, as Gennady Golovkin was growing in popularity, he would regularly take shots at him. And I used to think Andre did this because of the fight that never was, the fight that never materialized. I used to think that's what it was about. But then he starts taking shots at Canelo Alvarez, who he used to like. He starts taking shots at him. He even took shots at Anthony Joshua, saying that he would move up in weight and he would fight him and he would beat him. Coincidentally, whenever Andre starts taking shots at a guy, the way he's now taking shots at Canelo, it's when the guy starts to get popular, really popular. He did this to Gennady. He did it to Canelo. He even did it to Anthony Joshua,
Yeah.
a fucking heavyweight.
Yeah.
Circa 2015, when he was taking all those shots at Gennady, I didn't figure it was a case of the green-eyed monster, at least not then. But over time, noticing the pattern that you went from taking shots at Gennady to taking shots at Canelo to taking shots at Anthony Joshua, as they're growing in popularity, I started to see a pattern. Any fighter that's a big popular fighter, a big ticket seller, in all the ways that Andre Ward was never a big ticket seller, it won't be long before he starts taking shots at them, because his real problem is their popularity, not anything that he's saying.
His real problem is he's got middle child syndrome.
Now, I could sit here and address every point that he tried to make, every bullet point, bit by bit, but I've actually done that before. There's nothing that Andre Ward can say about Canelo that can't be turned around on him, that can't be said about him. You're saying that Canelo didn't fight the best version of Sergey. you didn't fight the best version of Chad Dawson.
You're saying that Canelo not fighting David, little more than just a mandatory challenger, is a stain on his legacy. I could say the same thing about Dimitri. I could say the same thing about Artur.
I could say the same thing about you and your legacy. I could say the same thing. That's a stain on your legacy that you didn't fight them. The only reason people don't, and they don't call you out on it as often as they might call out Canelo, is because you were never as popular as Canelo. So not that many people were paying attention. But that's what your problem is, isn't it? That you've got middle child syndrome. That you're always in somebody else's shadow. When you were doing your best work at super middleweight, you were in the shadow of Floyd Mayweather. You were in the shadow of Manny Pacquiao. What most Americans were watching at that time was the welterweight division for Floyd and Manny. They weren't watching super middleweight, which at that time was a mostly European division.
Comprised of mostly European fighters. Americans weren't watching super middleweight then the way they are now.
Andre spent a lot of time there, and while he was there, Americans weren't watching him. They weren't watching that division. They were watching welterweight. Floyd, Manny.
And when their era ended and Gennady Golovkin was growing in profile and popularity, more and more Americans were watching middleweight, not super middleweight or light heavyweight.
Anthony Joshua was growing in popularity at heavyweight. More and more Americans started paying attention to the heavyweight division when he rolled around.
Andre's always in the background. That's what his problem is.
That's what his real problem is, that he has middle child syndrome. He's resentful that in spite of his amateur accolades, what he managed to do at super middle and at light heavy, he was never that popular. He was never that big a ticket seller. It's like a villain's origin story, the story arc for the bad guy in a slasher movie.
The green-eyed monster.
So if in the next 12 months, all the marquee attractions in the sport of boxing start suffering inexplicable and gruesome deaths, we'll know who the prime suspect will be.
Andre Ward, the green-eyed monster.
When Anthony's star was rising, Anthony Joshua, I remember Andre Ward said he'd go up there and fight him. If you remember Andre Ward, he was a mid-range to inside fighter, and not a particularly strong one either.
What, you're gonna dominate the pocket against the heavyweight? Is that what you expect us to believe? Or are you just that big a hater?
Did the green-eyed monster have that strong a hold over you that you got it in your head you could go to heavyweight and fight that guy? You got knocked on your face by Darnell Boone and knocked on your ass by Sergey Kovalev.
What do you think would happen if Anthony Joshua laid a glove on you?
And why was it Anthony Joshua you were looking at, not Deontay Wilder? He's a heavyweight.
Yeah, but he wasn't a big ticket seller. Not without Tyson Fury.
The plot thickens that every time you see or hear from Andre Ward now, it's when he's taking shots at somebody. In this instance, Canelo Alvarez. It only accents what I've been telling you all along. This guy's got a bad case of the gimmies.
He's entitled.
Self-important. He's got a bad case of middle child syndrome. In men's heavyweight news, on the heels of this past weekend's big knockout win for Anthony Joshua over Francis Ngannou, we turn our attention to the next big heavyweight fight, the heavyweight title fight, the undisputed match between the two remaining champions at this weight, Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. Tony Bellew.
He chimed in.
He said, I don't think anyone beats Usyk, and that includes Tyson Fury. His style changed, and now he's an aggressive counterpuncher, so he presses you to get you to punch. It ain't gonna work against Usyk. The only chance he has is a puncher's chance, and he's not the biggest puncher if I'm being totally honest. I still think he's a brilliant fighter, but I just think Usyk's the best heavyweight in the world. It helps that Alexander Usyk beat his old buddy, Anthony Joshua, not once, but twice.
To motivate these comments.
It also helps that Tony Bellew was knocked out by Alexander Usyk himself.
To motivate these comments.
Getting pro boxers or retired boxers to chime in and give their thoughts on a fight, it's hit or miss because it's seldom ever unbiased. It's seldom ever objective. Just looking at the match for what it is, looking at the two fighters, and providing professional analysis, insights into what we should expect. It's hit or miss when the guy used to be a fighter himself. It's definitely hit or miss when he fought one of the two guys.
But I still agree with him.
Why do you agree with him if you feel that Tony Bellew might be partial in this conversation, partial to Usyk?
Because he said what I've been saying. Tyson Fury's not that big a puncher.
I mean, he's a heavyweight. To some degree, all heavyweights can punch. That much weight being behind a punch, they can all punch hard to some degree. But some guys do punch harder than others. I think Anthony punches harder than Tyson Fury. Much harder. And there are ample examples of that. They share several common opponents, Anthony and Tyson Fury. About five. And of the five, Fury's only ever knocked out just one of the 5, Dillian White.
So, if Alexander Usyk could go 24 rounds with Anthony Joshua, who's a bigger puncher than Tyson Fury,
survive him, survive the onslaught, and work around his power, I don't think he has to worry much about Tyson Fury's power. If what we're talking about is power, raw punching power, Anthony's got more of that than Tyson Fury, and Usyk took it.
That's why I agree with Tony that Fury's not the biggest puncher.
In spite of what might be biased commentary, I do agree that I don't think Fury's the biggest puncher either. He didn't knock out Otto Wallin. He didn't knock out Francis Ngannou.
Anthony did.
I do agree with Tony Bellew on that. I do agree with Tony Bellew that Usyk beats him. Usyk beats him.
Just because of that?
No, not just because of that. There's a lot more to it than just that. There's the fact that Tyson Fury, more often than not, is on his toes, on the balls of his feet, moving around the ring, using it, feinting and jabbing and boxing.
It's not how he fought Wilder.
No, it's not. The last 2 fights he mowed Wilder down, but that's the only time he fought like that. He didn't fight anybody else like that. He didn't fight Derek Chisora like that. He didn't fight Dillian White like that. He didn't fight Francis Ngannou like that. The only time you've seen Tyson Fury become this come-forward pressure guy was with Wilder due to a tactical deficiency in Wilder.
But he didn't try that with anybody else.
And I don't think he's going to try that with Alexander Usyk, because you will notice that ahead of the fight, he's fit and trim. He's slim. He's slimmer than he was in the Ngannou fight, and the White fight, and the Chisora fight. He shed the excess. He shed the weight, and it's likely so that he can move around without having to carry it, without having to become exhausted as a result.
Carrying all that weight.
With Wilder, he came in extra heavy. With Usyk, he seems to be traveling light.
He wants to box.
And I don't think he's a better boxer than Alexander Usyk. I don't think he's a better mover than Alexander Usyk. I think he moves well for a man his size. And against other lumbering lummoxes, that gives him an advantage. But he doesn't actually have that advantage over Usyk. He's not a better boxer, not a better mover, not better at playing at the angles.
And like Tony said, he's not that big a puncher.
And that's just looking at the mechanics of the fight. The mechanics. That's not counting intangibles like the cut over Fury's eye, whether he put it there himself or not.
Conspiracy theories aside,
The cut could open up in the fight.
Usyk can use that to his advantage to force a stoppage.
Usyk is a more consummate professional than Tyson Fury. He doesn't have a rabid cocaine addiction. And let's be honest, Fury can't be feeling too confident watching his domestic rival knock off guys that he struggled with and making it look easy. Otto Wallin,
Francis Ngannou.
He can't be feeling too confident in himself right now. No, I think he feels like the walls are closing in. I've said it before and I'll say it again. He didn't want this.
Didn't really want the Usyk fight.
They're offering him so much money to do it. Now there's a penalty attached if he withdraws, so he's not left with much of a choice.
It's got to be weighing heavy on his mind.
So I do agree with Tony Bellew. I do. I think Usyk beats him.
Handily.